this is additional money that's been made available to us?
The two contracts are part of carryover Title IIA, and must be expended by June 30th, 2009.
Okay, so you're going to get all this in the middle schools by the end of this school year?
That is correct.
Or can it be carried over again?
It cannot.
Okay, so this is basically going back to coaching, and one of them was for administrators and the other's for teachers?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my question, this all relates to money you knew about last December, I guess.
That is correct. The district was notified of its carryover amounts in December, and we began to work with the MDE in January. Again, we had to go through the competitive bidding process because the materials were involved, and once we went through the process, prior to bringing this before the board, we've already conducted a 7 to 9 day curriculum mapping for our middle school courses in English Language Arts and Math. So we have the pacing already for ENI to generate the formative assessments. So we were proactive enough to have what ENI needs to be able to create our formative assessments, which will be ready to go beginning next year. Our teachers will have in hand before summer the formative assessments and know how to use those formative assessments to change their instruction in the classroom.
Okay, now, could you bring us up to date? This was something that happened last December. You've talked about something happening now with federal money. Could the administration give us a slight heads up on what that's all about? The money, how much it is, what it requires in terms of Title I, so that we're going to be discussing this, I assume. As I say, I'll be glad to bring it up at the next meeting.
Mr. Davis, are you referring to the Reinvestment and Recovery Act?
Let me ask a question, Mr. Davis. Does that question relate to Enclosure E4, or are we finished with that?
I don't know. I'm trying to have us be advised. I don't care under what heading, but this is, what I'm trying to bring up is, this is Title IIA and Title V.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking about Title I, which is not in any of these submissions.
All right, before you answer that then, are there any other questions on Enclosure E4? That's why I asked to make sure we're done with this before we move on. Do this orderly. Any other questions on Enclosure E4? All right, Ms. Hodges.
So when we say not to exceed $450,000, we're talking about a grant, right?
Yes.
We're not, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
All right. There being no other discussion on those enclosure items, the second question that came up, Dr. Wallace, related to Title I money, and in particular, I think it related to the question talked about Title I money for high schools. What about secondary schools? I know there's a recommendation in CAFTRS that the secondary buildings become Title I. Maybe we can, and I don't know if that's separate, but Ms. Lamont, I don't know, I guess if you understand what the question was, you can answer it.
I'll give it a shot. The district is preparing to designate the 3 high schools as Title I, as recommended by the Michigan Department of Education and as supported by this administration, in order to allow additional flexibility for the use of funds and to provide the type of supplemental services our high school students need that are struggling. We are working very closely with our high school administration in preparing them for the additional requirements in their school improvement plans, in the way the changes in the way they budget, and the compliance issues that will be required of them in using Title I funds. We've already had our high school administration trained in Title I compliance and regulations. So we have a very good start with our high school administrators. During our Title I training, there were many middle school principals there because they have had the heads up that if there's enough money available, we would like them to also be Title I designated, because as of next year, our Title V innovative funds will no longer be available to our district or any district in the state or nation. So with the elimination of innovative program, Title V, we are going to have to highly rely on Title I for our reform initiatives and to support our staff and students. So we are preparing first and foremost for our high schools, and once we receive our allocation, we're anticipating sometime in April, we would highly recommend consideration for Title I for every one of our middle schools.
I just wanted that, I thought we ought to know that, and it's supposed to be a lot of money. And what I wanted to have the administration address, since we're sort of identifying our middle schools as, of course, I was the head of the Middle School Reform Committee 10 years ago, and we had all kinds of recommendations that I don't think any were followed. But it sounds like we're going to have a lot of money, and what I'm trying to distinguish between is coaching versus instruction. A lot of the money we're spending out of these grants at this point appears to be largely for coaching. I understand that out of some of the Title I money that we'll be getting in April, that can be used for direct instruction, or at least supporting instruction inside the classroom, and doesn't have to be classified as coaching. If that's the case, I'd really appreciate if the administration would keep us up to speed, because April, you're going to want some action quickly, and April, I think it would be nice if we knew in advance what you're planning, because the way I see it, we have a question of whether we have 2 teachers in the classroom with some of this money, whether we have assistants in the classroom with some of this money. I think it should be in the high schools, but I think it's based on what I was observing at No Child Left Behind Committee this week, that there's a lot of push for getting these kids reading and doing math as they come into high school at a higher level, which I think we've discussed. But if this, and it's always been a budget problem, but if we do have this money to, I would hope that we look at direct instruction, supplemental instruction, to try and get these kids up to speed. And that's my own personal opinion. I would like the administration to let us know where they stand on that over the next few weeks. Thank you.
Ms. Shirley Rogers.
I'd like to ask, because there are rumors going around with the, I'll refer to it as stimulus money for education. I don't know what they're calling it. And that it is going through the governor's office, and the governor's office has made some decisions about how those funds are going to be used in the state of Michigan. I haven't seen anything coming through to say how much money Lansing is going to get so that we can begin making plans for it. You probably don't have an answer, because from what I'm hearing, some things are still up in the air, and there's a question as to whether or not the governor is actually going to have money available that will directly go to districts. So we don't know what's happening with that. But I would like to have the board receive an update on that money and what that may mean for our district, to maybe address some of the concerns that Mr. Davis has, because when I heard his question, I heard it over several types of money, and I think that was one of them.
Okay.
Just indicate that I've been in contact every couple weeks or so. I asked the administration as to whether or not we've heard anything, and certainly once that information comes out, we will notify board members. I am on top of that.